Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Harris Bard for Pond Life Aquatics in Tropical Fish London, and in today's video I am going to be showing you how I set up one of the reddest aquascapes I ever have. Let's get into it.
So the reason behind this aquascape was because my older brother moved into his new flat and wanted an aquarium in his living room. And we had this Joule 110 sat around the shop gathering dust, and I thought it would be an excellent opportunity to try out some Superfish and Colombo gear ahead of my workshop, and also to demonstrate how much fun having all of this hardscape and plant available at your fingertips can be when you have an idea in your head. So as you can see, I brought loads of different pieces of wood and rock with me to the flat, and I landed on this Weo gnarly wood, and it was pretty much perfect except for this bottom stem. So I brought with me some small tools. This is a pull away saw, which, as you can see, you have to pull away from the piece of wood. And I decided to cut through it partially and then snap off the offending branch so that it wasn't just a clean cut. And I immediately cut myself doing this, so I should have been wearing gloves. I decided for this aquascape to go with Flora Base Pro by Colombo, which isn't for any particular reason except for I wanted to try it out. I've read some very good things about it, and honestly, I can say I'm really not disappointed at all. In terms of grain, if you know about Substrate, it's very similar to the Awaza Scaper Soil Small, which I adore as a substrate. I bought 2 bags of the Colombo soil with me, which thank God I did, because I went through this soil really quite quickly when I was initially setting up this aquarium. You can see that I just flattened it out as soon as I put the first bag in, and then immediately went back in with the second bag. I knew I wanted a relatively steep substrate for this aquarium because I wanted the root to almost protrude out of the top of the aquarium. I think when creating dramatic landscapes, a lot of the time when you look at people like George Farmer's aquascapes, see that he actually a lot of the time allows the hardscape to protrude out the top of the aquarium. I feel like this always gives a really dramatic look to the overall aquascape in the end.
I love feeling aquasoil somewhere. I love the feeling of aquasoil between my fingers.
I know my older brother was making fun of me there, but I genuinely do love how aquasoil feels. It was at this point in the aquascape that I decided to start getting the skeleton of the hardscape in place, and I knew that the root was going to be the spine of the skeleton, if we're going to go with that analogy, and I needed it to sit roughly where I wanted it to. I knew I was going to prop it on rock, but I figured it was important to get it sat initially where I wanted it to go. I knew I was going to use lava rock for this aquascape. I think the reds from lava rock are absolutely gorgeous. Unfortunately, I've never actually really worked with it. I've always been quite afraid to work with lava rock just because we've not always kept it in stock at Pond Life. So I was just reluctant to take it home whenever we had it in. Luckily, I got to play with it during this aquascape and I had a really great time. I literally brought an entire 20 kilo crate with me so that I could play around with different size pieces in different makeups throughout creating this aquascape, and it is such a joy to do. If you've never worked with hardscape or aquascaped in a way where you don't have to worry about how many pieces you have available at any given time, it really cannot be expressed enough how great it is. Having an entire shop at your disposal, or even just 20 kilos of lava rock at your disposal, really takes the stress out of knowing that you'll be able to achieve what's in your head. So at this point, I had pretty much decided that I wanted the rocks to almost look like they had caved in upon this branch, almost like it was this grand tree that had fallen off of the cliffside, which wasn't the initial intention. The initial intention was honestly for it to look like a root coming out of the side of a riverbed, but I like this interpretation as well, and if aquascaping is art, which I believe it is, I can interpret this any way I want. I decided that I wanted a third structure coming out of this root to really help give an even more dramatic poise to the wood. And you can see I'm just playing around with different small pieces that I had with me, and decided that I was going to go with just the single extra branch. Thankfully, I had Dymax's Compose Seal on hand to help me attach the wood together. And I really can't express this enough. Dymax's Compose Seal is the best thing to happen to hardscaping since I've been alive. It is so night and day in terms of working with it. Knowing that I want to attach pieces like this and not having to worry that it's going to take hours for a epoxy to join or anything like that, I can literally just smush in some of this Dymax Compose Seal and I just know that it's going to be set in 30 seconds and I can get on with the rest of the hardscape. I literally hit it with some activating glue, it smokes off for 15 to 30 seconds, I walk away, have a drink of water, and I come back and I know the hardscape is set and ready for me to use. I finally used the last of the Aquasoil to really create a hard bank behind the top right hand side of the lava rock, because I knew I wanted to plant in behind that and I didn't want the plants to get lost behind the hardscape. It was now time to flood the aquarium, and honestly seeing the reds come out of the gnarly wood and the lava rock, which is such a joy. I think particularly when hardscape is moistened, you really get an idea of what it's going to look like, and I was just so excited at this point. I decided to start cleaning off my plants, and I went in with the first plant of the scape, which is Amania gracilis, which is a plant that I've honestly never worked with before, but it is the first of our reddish tinge. It's actually the most green plant that I decided to use, except for the final plant, which is, I'm not going to hide it, Liliopis novia zealandia, and I wanted it to be the corner piece that would add a little bit of green and a little bit of red to tie this entire aquascape together, because the next plants are all very quite red. This is Alternanthera riekene mini, which is the first Alternanthera plant that we're going to be using in this scape, but it is far from the last. It is this gorgeous little diminutive stem plant that's not quite as fast growing as a lot of green stem planting, but it's got these really gorgeous delicate leaves that come up bright red under highlight and CO2, which this tank is going to have. And I just thought it would frame down the front right hand side of this scape really, really beautifully. And the idea was I wanted it to brush down the front right of this root and kind of give a feathered sweeping feeling to how the scape was going to look. The next plant is again Alternanthera, but riekene regular, which is again just such a stunning red stem plant. It's got slightly thicker stems than its mini counterpart with bright red leaves, and this was going to go down the center next to the Amelia gracchalis. Alternanthera riekene has a very special place in my heart, as it was the first red plant that I ever tried to grow. Not very successfully at the time, but I learned from it. This next plant is Alternanthera cardinalis variegata, which is the variegated version of its cardinalis counterpart, and it's got these gorgeous green points through its stems to its beautiful pink underbellies. This really does need a good CO2 dose in it. And finally, we decided to go with Alternanthera cardinalis, just to finish off all of these beautiful reds and pinks through this aquascape. So all in all, we used 4 different kinds of Alternanthera next to a single Amalia grassalis, which might seem a shame to some people, but I really think the greens in the Amalia paid off. The final plant is Liliopis novia zealandia, and I decided to try and make a pseudo carpet out of this. It will eventually become very thick and will need cutting back very quickly under this amount of light and CO2, but I thought, just to articulate how great it can be to go really heavy on planting straight off the bat, you don't really have to worry about what you have available. I decided to go with, I think this was about 6 pots of Novia Zealandia in the end, and it really paid off. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous, and flooding this aquarium, you can really start to see the whole thing come together. To finish off this aquascape, I hooked up an external Superfish filter, which I did have a little bit of trouble with the pipe work. This was around 10 o'clock at night. I had been working on this aquascape for the better part of 4 hours and I was getting tired. So I got the filter set up in place and running, scooped off the top, gave it its final little top up, and then got the Colombo diffuser in place, ready for when my older brother got his solenoid valve in situ for his CO2 diffuser. And I think this might be the nicest aquascape I've ever made. I think it's really quite beautiful. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out, and I really do think it goes to show that having access to a large variety of plants to articulate a vision with hardscape of choice and substrate of choice really does make a difference. And just as a side note, that Superfish RGB scaper light is absolutely beautiful.
So that was it. I was really happy with the way that this aquarium turned out. It was exactly what I kind of imagined in my head, where I had this idea of having the big swooping piece of rock with lava stone and all the reds kind of interact with each other, and having this huge amount of hardscape to play with me there in the house allowed me to create that, which kind of leads me on to one of the reasons I'm making this video, which is I am doing an aquascaping workshop on April the 27th at the end of this month now, and there is a few slots still available. So if you live in London or near London and want to be able to aquascape in this way where you have everything readily available, it's something that I can't articulate to people who've never really done it before, where when you buy things to aquascape with and you have a finite things to work with and you can't really make it the perfect thing that you want for yourself. You have to work with what you've got, and occasionally you end up kind of settling for what works rather than what you really want to achieve. So the idea of this workshop is that you're going to have access to everything. You're going to have different substrates, hardscapes, plants. You're going to be able to use things, play with them, and then if you don't like them, put them back. Obviously plants, if you're going to open up some tissue culture, maybe not. But for potted plants, if there's things that people want to share or just use a little bit of, we're more than happy for people to play around with different things, see how they look, put them back, get new things. It's going to be a real interesting way of aquascaping, where if you have a vision in your head that you want to achieve in Escaper Cube 25 by Superfish, then we're going to be able to work together and create that. I haven't said in the videos how much they cost, and I realized that might have been a mistake. It is £200 for all in. You get the aquarium, substrate, hardscape, plants, and then you get to take it home and flood it yourself, which I think is a great deal. Just to be able to use everything in store as is, get to play with it, and know that you're going to be able to create something that you're happy with, ready as soon as it's flooded. So if you are in London or the surrounding area and want to join us, then we are based at 1 Finchley Nurseries, NW7 1AS, April the 27th. The tickets are available online, or you can call us in store. I'll leave a link in the description and I'll pin it in the top comments for when you guys want to join us for a workshop. And if this one's successful, then I'll be doing it again. And I'll probably do it again anyway, because I absolutely love aquascaping. I've been loving doing it recently. I'm going to be doing another one in store later this week. I don't think we're getting any orders in this week. We still have quite a heavy amount of stock. We're getting some plants in, which I will talk about on Saturday. But for the time being, it's looking like Saturday's video will be a Aquafleur plant order video alongside possibly a small aquascape. So for now, that's everything from me. And I hope you'll join me again next time for this Pond